Welcome to the Undisputed podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. They've got a busy slate, so Skip, Shannon, let's get to it.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. Hope you had a nice weekend. How are you guys doing today?
Jenny, I had a great weekend. I've never been so excited to watch something as I was the Last Dance documentary last night. And Skip, I started rewatching it again, and I was like, man, let me get my you-know-what in the bed. I got to get up in the morning.
All I know is I don't know why we're even having a show today, because what we saw last night laid to rest any far-fetched notion that LeBron James is the GOAT. We saw the GOAT last night.
Skip, we saw like a handful of ball games. It's hard to say after watching 5 ball games that you're going to say that man was the GOAT. It was more about his aura and what? We're going to talk about it.
We are going to talk about it. We have so much to talk about when it comes to Michael Jordan, and I want to jump right into it. Skip, good choice on your shirt today. Last night, we finally had the opportunity to watch the first 2 episodes of Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance. We learned so much along the way. I honestly couldn't look away, but one of the big takeaways was we learned that even if the Bulls were to go 82-0 in the 1997-98 season, Jerry Krause was not going to bring Phil Jackson back as head coach either way. So Shannon, let's get right to it. What was your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway, Skip, was the hatred, the vitriol that Michael Jordan and so many of his teammates had towards Jerry Krause. And the open and blatant disrespect that they showed this man. Skip, you know, I was watching it last night, as everybody, I'm sure 20, 25 million other people was watching, Skip. And Michael, like, asked the man, did he have diet pills in his pockets? And asked, are you going to be in the layup line? They're going to have to lower the rim. And it was reported that Scottie Pippen was hurling, like, it was more than yada, yada. It was, like, open and blatant, and the harshness and the curse words that they hurled toward this man. But, Skip, Jerry Krause bears a lot of responsibility for ultimately breaking this team up. But the ultimate responsibility goes to Jerry Reinsdorf, because just like he got on a plane and took his butt to Montana to sign Phil Jackson to a 1-year deal, if he wanted to keep this team together, he could have. So although Jerry Krause gets blamed, deserves some of the blame, Jerry Reinsdorf could have kept this team together. It reminds you of something that happened 5-6 years earlier, Skip, with Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones, because if Jerry wanted to keep it together, he could have. If Jerry Reinsdorf, Skip, he was the majority owner of the team. Yes, he bestowed a lot of power on Jerry Krause. Yes, he let him trade players and trade up in the draft and release players. He let him do all that. But you know one thing, Skip Bayless, having been around this game for a long period of time, when you're dealing with those high level of players and you're moving up and down in the draft, you run everything by the owner. And he ran that by the owner. And trying to trade Scottie Pippen, they entertained that. But I think they thought that, you know, if we go this far, Jordan might walk a season earlier. Now, he later walked after the season, Skip. But another thing, Skip, I'm watching, and I know, look, like I said, I met Michael Jordan and the aura around him. He's as close to a godlike figure that I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. But, Skip, the aura around him and the way people reacted when he came into a building or he walked past them down the street, Skip, I can honestly say this. Just like there'll never be another Tiger Woods, there'll never be another Muhammad Ali. Now, they might be guys that win more golf titles than Tiger Woods. They might be a guy that wins more heavyweight and become undisputed heavyweight champion more times than Muhammad Ali. But nobody will ever have that kind of cachet. Skip, nothing like this. There'll never be another team. Because if you think about it, Skip, there have been teams that had the top 2 stars were bigger than you know, Scottie was the second star. But if you look at Shaq, Kobe, and you look at Durant, and you look at, say, Steph Curry and what they possess, but they didn't care like this here, Skip. I mean, look, the Eagles are unbelievable, but they're not the Rolling Stones. And Skip, and that's no disrespect to Eagles fans out there, but it's just different. They were different, and they did this, Skip, 15, 20 years before social media. So can you imagine maybe the scrutiny would have gotten to him and maybe we'd have learned some things we didn't need to know. But, Skip, I've never seen anything like this here. I thought I understood the aura around Michael Jordan, Skip, because when I met him, and he had just, as a matter of fact, I don't even think he had announced his retirement, maybe he had, at the Super Bowl during in January or February of '94. He was the first person I actually saw with bodyguards. You know, Skip, you see the movies and you see somebody with bodyguards and you see these gangsters and they got bodyguards. But an actual person with my own eyes, he was the first person I ever saw with that because I was only around football players. And so football players didn't have bodyguards at the time. But, Skip, this was unbelievable. And to see what drove him and how it just like, and he said something, Skip, he like, and I was reading where he said, if I find somebody would have got a weakness, I take advantage of it. And I take advantage of it again. And again, and again, and again. He says, I don't let up. Zach LaVine, that's what he said. He said, I found Allie Quigley couldn't jump in the air and put the ball between her legs and lay it off the backboard. So, Skip, there goes your theory. You find somebody that has a weakness, you run it into the ground until you get the satisfaction and the results that you require, which is to win. And he wanted to win at all costs.
Wow. Are you finished? You know, it's funny to me that for a man who constantly wears a goat mask to try to convince people out there that LeBron James is even remotely even in the same conversation with Michael Jeffrey Jordan, for that kind of man, you just went on for 12 minutes. I think the show is close to over now, rhapsodizing about Michael Jeffrey Jordan, and I love it. I could sit and listen to you all day because everything you said is right on point for the first time in a long time. We're going to get to LeBron versus Michael in a few minutes. So I'm going to stay right here on the guy that I have endorsed as the one and only number 23, the original and only 23, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. It's funny that you bring up the fact that Jerry versus Jimmy fell apart fairly quickly in Dallas because I left Jerry versus Jimmy. I wrote 3 books on the Cowboys, and the last 2 dealt with Jerry versus Jimmy. And I went straight from those 3 books to becoming the lead columnist at the Chicago Tribune, right on schedule, 1997, 1998. And I was there for The Last Dance. I got to see it from the inside out. So for me, watching the documentary last night, nothing shocked me. Nothing even surprised me. The upshot of it was I was just happy that the world got to see what scoundrels Jerry Krause and, as you point out, Jerry Reinsdorf were in 97, 98, because they broke up the best defensive team I ever saw, and I think the greatest overall team I ever saw, because Jordan was at his peak. And he did have some help from Scottie Pippen and some help from Dennis Rodman and some help from Phil Jackson, a great head coach, obviously. But that team revolved around the sun and the moon. It was both sun and moon were Michael Jordan. And the point was that right away, I had a long sit-down interview with Jerry Krause, and I got to see inside this little man. And to remind people, as we talked about on Friday, this little man, as Reinsdorf, the owner, admitted last night, started out as, wait a second, a baseball scout for Reinsdorf's White Sox? That was his start as a personnel man. And if you can explain to me why Jerry Reinsdorf took a liking to this little man with a huge ego, you're beyond me. Because Jerry Reinsdorf admitted in a recent interview during the documentary last night that he was told by people in his organization, don't touch Krause. He tends to alienate people. So what did Jerry Reinsdorf do? He made him the general manager and the operator, I was going to say, of Michael Jordan's Bulls. He did not draft Michael Jordan. As we saw last night, Rod Thorne drafted him, and he fell into Rod Thorne's lap, obviously, as the 3rd overall pick. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But the point was that Jerry Krause got lifted by Michael Jordan into the national spotlight. And I was just glad that people nationally could see what a mess Jerry Krause made of that organization. He did draft Scottie Pippen, but Scottie Pippen was on everybody's radar coming out of Central Arkansas. And Jerry Krause's ego got so big that he began to clash, obviously, with Phil Jackson, who actually did what Jimmy Johnson did to Jerry Jones, which was say, who are you? You haven't earned the right to be part of this. Well, I always defended Jerry because at least Jerry played college football. He's a starter at Arkansas with Jimmy on a national championship team in 1964. Jerry Krause says he played high school baseball at Taft High School in Chicago. I have a hard time even believing that. Said he was a catcher. I don't know about that, but I do know he had no background in basketball to speak of until Jerry Reinsdorf made him his henchman running the Bulls. He was the bad cop, and he did Jerry Reinsdorf's bidding. And Shannon, to your point, the shocking quote to me last night was from Jerry Reinsdorf in a recent interview. This interview wasn't 1998. It was done recently for the documentary. And he said that he and Jerry Krause decided going into 97, 98, that except for Michael, all the other players were nearing the ends of their careers. What? I was there. Scottie Pippen went on and played 6 more years. I can go right down the list. Everybody went on to play somewhere else. They were not nearing the end of their careers. We're going to debate this later in the show. I believe they would have won 2 more championships. It was just the egos of Reinsdorf and Krause. They couldn't stand it that Jordan had taken over the whole city, not to mention the whole NBA basketball world. They were jealous. They were resentful. But in this case, if we can compare it to Belichick versus Tom Brady, we had a Robert Kraft in the middle who kept taking Brady's side. I think he was taking Brady's side to the end. In this case, the owner was taking Jerry Krause's side and saying, go, Jerry, go, against Phil, against Michael. And to Michael's undying credit, he had pledged allegiance to Phil, and he stuck by his guns. That's what you're going to see in this documentary. Michael's pride was so supreme. His principles were so high that once he pledged allegiance, he just said, you send that man out the back door. I'm walking out the back door behind him. Krause had fallen in love with Tim Floyd. I know Tim very well. He's a good guy, and he was on a nice arc as a young college basketball coach. But why he would think I could replace Phil Jackson with Tim Floyd out of Iowa State was beyond comprehension to me. So I'm glad that everybody got to see that the real villain here actually exposed himself last night. It's Jerry Reinsdorf. He's the one who said, we decided they were all nearing the ends of their careers. What are you doing? What are you talking about? That was outrageous that I wanted to hear Jerry Reinsdorf apologize last night and say, you know what? I've come to my senses. I see what we broke up. And he was still adamant. No, we did the right thing. You did the right thing. You basically ended basketball in Chicago as you knew it. Michael brought basketball to a city that had never had great pro basketball. And then Jerry, the two Jerrys, ended it. Your thoughts, Shannon Sharpe?
Skip, you're absolutely right. And I've never seen anything like this where a general manager and the owner is upset, aggravated, that it seems like the turnaround was because of Michael Jordan. And Jerry Reinsdorf, he owned the team. Jerry Krause, he ran the team for Jerry Reinsdorf. Skip, they became bitter. They became bitter because they weren't getting the credit. Mr. Kraft, Skip, can you imagine Mr. Kraft breaking this thing up early? Now, and some people still believe that they could have gone on and maybe won another one or 2 more with the Patriots. But for 20 years, they let this thing stick together for 20 years. Jerry Reinsdorf, they broke it up prematurely. Skip, look, I don't know. I don't want to be, hypocritical here and say, yeah, they would have or they wouldn't have. But I will say this. I believe, as Michael said, we've earned the right to defend what we've won. And if somebody beats us, so be it. We will gladly move along. But you don't break it up because of what? Skip it. And early on, I'm listening a lot of these after the show and then listen to that. I think her name Jane McManus, Skip. She writes she's in Boston. And she was explaining how, like, Michael was
Jackie
so open
McMullen.
early on. Mm-hmm. Jackie McMullen, that's her name, Skip. Yeah, thank you. And Skip, it was like listening at her talk, how Michael despised Jerry Krause. And Skip, even as he despised him at his lowest, from the depth of his soul, he went out there and gave it everything. He got upset at Scotty. Yes, Scotty, I dislike him too. But you being selfish. You own a team. Look, I don't like him either. As a matter of fact, I don't really like Jerry Reinsdorf either. But we got to win this thing. And Jay Adonde, listen to Jay Adonde saying that Scotty was a little envious that Michael was getting. And Skip, that's natural. That's a natural human reaction. Hold on, did y'all forget about me? Hey, I'm 6'7", can guard 4 or 5 different positions. Look, I can't score like he can, but I can defend. I lead in assists. I lead in steals. You know what I do. And all y'all talking about is Mike. What about Scotty? And I think Jordan paid Scottie Pippen the ultimate compliment. There has never been another compliment that he could receive that's greater than what Michael gave him last night. Not top 50 player, not one of the all-time greats, none of that, Skip. He said, you cannot say Michael Jordan without saying Scottie Pippen. That is the greatest mark. Not being 50, not one of the 50 greatest, not the 6th championship. Skip, when that man spoke that out of his mouth, Scottie Pippen should have said, you know what? Nothing else matters. You can say I was robbing. You can say whatever you want to say. But that man just blessed me. That man knows what I meant to him and what his success. And he said it. There's no Michael without Scotty. But Skip, I still can't believe it. Look, I've known players. I've played with players that didn't like the coach. I played with players that didn't like the general manager. Skip, the blatant disrespect. Skip, now we might say something behind the guy's back. Skip, they're talking like this, like the man's not even there and he's standing right next to him. And I'm like, man, and I think this is kind of what Jordan was alluding to, Skip, is going to make him look like a bad guy because it seemed like real petty that you're Michael Jordan. You're the greatest player. You got the aura of invincibility around you. You're the Pied Piper. Skip, did you remember when they went, I think it was in France. I think it was in France or they were overseas. And on the headline of the paper, Michael Jordan is bigger than the Pope. Skip, do you understand what that means? Bigger than the Pope? Man, there's nothing going to be like this, Skip. I want to see it.
So the reason I didn't think Michael came off badly last night, that he did not come across as he feared as a horrible person, is because the world got to see what a scoundrel, what a villain Jerry Krause truly was. And after my first long sit down with Jerry Krause, I wrote a piece for the Chicago Tribune in which I compared Jerry Krause to the Penguin in the Batman movie. If you remember the 1992 Batman Returns, remember the Danny DeVito Penguin that he played? Yes, and that was in the Tim Burton Batman starring Michael Keaton as Batman. Right. That guy, that Danny DeVito Penguin character, that was Jerry Krause. And it didn't bother me a bit that Jordan constantly shamed him. And again, there was the line about, what are those pills? Are those short pills or diet pills? And I told you the story about being at a Pro-Am golf tournament in which Jordan asked me to come inside the ropes. And I walked a couple of holes with him, and I told you that he hit his drive on a par 5 into a fairway bunker, told his caddy he wanted his 3-wood, and I said, man, that's a tough shot out of the sand to try to get that 3-wood up over the lip and all the way toward the green. And he said, no, it's not a tough shot. I just imagine that the golf ball is Jerry Krause's face. And to me, that's when it hit home the level of bitterness he had. And it was legit bitterness. Jerry Krause earned the bitterness. So again, back to your Pippen point, I want to address that because Jerry did pick Scottie Pippen. Then I thought it was well done in the documentary. Pippen then quickly agreed to a deal that was insanely wrong. It was just a bad deal, so bad that even Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, said, I would recommend you not take that deal. But Scottie wanted all that upfront money so that he
security.
could feel secure for him and his family back in Arkansas. He wanted security. He wanted something he could trust going forward. And obviously that deal within, as you always talk about in the NFL, about 6 months passed and it was rendered obsolete. So again, Scottie had building bitterness because he had made a mistake on his contract, but he was just as brutal on, just as he ridiculed Jerry Krause just as profanely, if not more so, than Michael Jordan did. And Michael would even go so far as to say, hey, we're about to go out and shoot layups. You want to come get in the layup line with us? We'll bring the goal down to your size. Because they couldn't stand the fact that this little penguin figure was going to break up the Bulls and send Phil Jackson out the door. And it's truly, to me, it's the saddest on-court story in basketball history. But Shannon, I got to tell you, as much respect as I have for Scottie Pippen and his ability, Michael did teach him how to handle himself. He taught him how to win. And I do not think Scottie was remotely as tough-minded as Michael was. And if you look what happened to Scottie, he was still in the prime of his career when the Bulls broke up. Remember, he went to Houston. He averaged 15 and 7 at Houston. Then he went to Portland with the Trailblazers and averaged 13, 11, 11, and 11. So again, he wasn't that guy. He didn't make Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan made Scottie. And I've always told you, there is no way to me that Scottie Pippen would have been a top 50 player if not for Jordan. He was very good, but he was not the second best player in the league like they were doing. And again, I admired Michael for giving him his due because he did do a lot of things for Michael.
No, Scottie was not even close to being the second best player in the league. Not when Magic was still in this league, Larry Bird, Hakeem Olajuwon. There were Charles Barkley, Karl Malone. They were all better players, all-around players than Scottie Pippen. Now, Scottie Pippen, look, Skip, he could defend like nobody's business. Now, we might not see a guy that can on the wing. People give Kawhi credit, and rightfully so. But Skip, Scottie Pippen was so long and could slide so gracefully. It was like he was on air, going side to side, 94 feet. Now, they don't pick up like that. Everybody tell me, they pick up. Pat Bev picks up like that, but they're not asking Pat Bev to do what he did on the offensive end. But, Skip, the thing that I saw, what I found most interesting, Jerry Krause was the kid, Skip. It was always the kid that really couldn't play that had the nicest basketball. And if you picked him, you could play with this ball as long as he got a run. But the moment he didn't get a run, what did he do? He took his ball home. Because they would never embrace Jerry Krause said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break it up. You don't want to include me? Let me show you what I'm going to do. And he did it. And Jerry Reinsdorf needs to get more blame, Skip. And they put all this on Jerry Krause, rightfully so, Skip, because he's the general manager. But Jerry Reinsdorf could have prevented this. He got on a plane and went to Montana and gave Phil Jackson $6 million for 1 year. But he couldn't say, Jerry, I'm going to disagree with you on this one. We're going to run this thing back. And if they get beat, we can break it up. But we're not going to break it up prematurely. He didn't do that, and he needs to bear more culpability in the breakup of the Bulls also.
One last quick point before we go to Jenny and go to break. The other thing that struck me last night was I hadn't focused on the fact that Michael Jordan's high school coaches cut him in his sophomore season. Shannon, I still can't get it through my head. That's got to be on them. Surely he had that much. This is a sophomore. You know, a sophomore, you're going on 16 years of age. How could you cut that guy from that team? I have no idea. Maybe they're the greatest high school team ever, but I think that's on those high school coaches.
Skip, they said, though, he was only 5'10", and when he came back for his junior year, he was 6'3". So it might have had a lot to do with height as opposed to skill set. So imagine a 5'10" skill set with a 6'3" skill set. So now he was a guard at 6'3", and he showed you what, but it drove him. That was the beginning of the driving, Skip.
And this is just the beginning, guys. It is crazy that, Skip, you lived it. Shannon, we experienced it. I was young, but I couldn't get enough last night.
No mercy.
LeBron's 3 championships and 4 regular season MVPs have made the NBA GOAT debate between he and Michael Jordan much closer as the king continues to rack up accolades. So, Shannon, how much has LeBron's success had to do with motivating Jordan to release this documentary right now?
He heard those footsteps. And for the very first time, he had heard those footsteps because they had been asking Michael to do this for an extended period of time, and he kept rebuffing their offers. It wasn't until, this is what they said, now if it's a lie, they told it. It wasn't until the parade in Cleveland in 2016, that during the parade, Jenny, not before the season, not when he was in Miami, not during the parade, because for the very first time we had a guy that beat a 73-win team, which had one more win than the 96 Bulls. They had a unanimous MVP, and they were down 3-1. And we started to hear the swells, something that we had never heard before. We had never heard Kobe in the GOAT debate with Mike. It wasn't until all of a sudden somebody got mad. I won't mention his name, but he's in his palatial estate up in Century City. One Skip Bayless tried to rebuff me, and when I started saying GOAT James, then all of a sudden you want to throw Kobe in there and say Kobe above. Yeah, you. Now all of a sudden, Skip, they said, if you ask a particular thing, you ask the who, the what, the where, the why, then you'll have your answer. We know who the who is. We know what the what is. And now we know why. LeBron James was running, and he had gained, and people had started to say, I don't know, Skip. I know what Michael was, but we've never seen anything like this. A guy that leads in points, rebounds, steals, and assists in a finals. A guy that, what? How is that possible? And for the very first time, because this is what we know about all-time great players or people, their legacy is very important to them, especially if you cannot add or take away from it. LeBron James was still building this mosaic. He's still building on it, Skip. Now, I believe, even though he's not finished, I've seen enough of this to say he's the GOAT. You're going to disagree, but you know why he did it, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself because you told me for the longest time, this is so beneath Michael. You think he's worried about LeBron? You think he's worried about this? I absolutely think he's worried about GOAT James.
Shannon Sharpe, I sat in this very chair in my humble abode way down the hill from you in Century City. You're way up the hill from me in that palatial estate, coming to us from the wine cellar up there in Bel Air. Wow. I can't compete with that, but LeBron cannot compete with Michael Jordan, and I'm going to tell you why. You're right about this. I sat right here on Friday, and I told you that the number one reason Michael finally agreed to do this was he got sick and tired of hearing Shannon Sharpe talking about LeBron James is the GOAT. And I also told you, and we're going to talk about this later, but I mentioned this to you on Friday. I gave you 2 reasons. And the second reason was Michael is so sick and tired of hearing people like me bring up the fact that he's the worst GM and team builder in the history of pro basketball because in the 14 years he has run the Charlotte franchise as the basketball man, as the Jerry Krause. They've made the playoffs 3 times in 14 years and have yet to win a single playoff series. And they're woeful again this year, and they're not going to make the playoffs if, in fact, we have any playoffs. So that would be 15 years. So my point to you was, yes, I didn't know this detail that you bring up until yesterday when I read Ramona Shelburne on ESPN.com write that this producer of this documentary broke through on the day of the parade in 2016 when LeBron had come all the way back from 3-1 down against the Golden State Warriors, thanks in large part to the suspension of Draymond Green, but I won't go there right now. And the point was he had done it with Kyrie hitting the last shot to win Game 7. So Michael finally relented after so many big, like, star filmmakers. Spike Lee had tried to do a documentary on LeBron, but LeBron finally signed off because this producer had done the Allen Iverson documentary. And I believe it was a 30 for 30 on ESPN. And Michael said, man, I love that. And I watched it 3 times. So suddenly on parade day in 2016, at that point, Michael was 53 years of age. He's now 57 years of age. I think it hit him. I got to fight fire with fire. I'm not on social media. That's beneath me. I'm not going to do Instagram. I'm not going to do Twitter. I'll do this one and only documentary. I'm going to do an epic documentary that is now supposed to be 10, as we know, 10 episodes. So he said, I'm going to do it in one fell swoop, and I'm going to sign off on all that behind-the-scenes footage that the NBA was allowed to shoot and keep in its archives off 97, 98 that hadn't seen the light of day. And yet Adam Silver and Michael had a deal in place whereby it would never see the light of day until both agreed it was okay. So not until 2016 did Michael sign off on it. And not until right now did Michael sign off on releasing it. And Shannon, all I can say is I now fully expect retaliation from LeBron. Remember 2 weeks ago, LeBron was talking about, he was talking about, I'm going to do some kind of video talking about all my highlights. Well, don't you think that was a preemptive strike at this? Don't you think there's a possibility that maybe by next week, we'll hear that Space Jam 2, the release date has been pushed completely into this coming week, and maybe it's going on Netflix? LeBron's going to have to fight back now because he's getting crushed by this. So, yes, I believe hugely that Michael just being sick and tired of all the LeBron talk because he can't stomach it motivated him to do this documentary.
And you said, and what Michael did, Skip, he's like you said, he's not on social media. He's not giving a whole lot of interviews. He says, here, watch this, and then get back to me. Skip, when I say Kobe, look, the thing is with Kobe is a historically great player. You could arguably say he's top 10, top 5, whatever you want to rank him. But it's hard to say that he's the GOAT when everything he did, he stole from Mike. You don't get to steal somebody else's everything, from the armband to the way he walked to the way he talked to every mannerism that Michael had, and be in the GOAT and be the GOAT. LeBron did it a totally different way. Like I said, Magic. LeBron has always been more Magic Johnson than Michael Jordan. Michael came into the league, Skip, and even Rod Thorne said, hell, if we'd have had the first pick, we was taking Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon was universally regarded as the best pick in that draft, Skip. And at that time, think about it, Skip, you went from Russell to Chamberlain to Kareem. Everybody wanted a 7-footer, especially if he was skilled, because they was winning the championship. It was you had to have a big man. The big man was winning the championship, Skip. So they were going to go with Olajuwon. It just, like you said, it just so happened the 2 tallest men in the draft, Skip, went 1-2. They're like, oh, we stuck with Jordan. What a nice consolation prize. The third pick, Skip, the bronze medal is Michael Jordan. That's what you got. You didn't get the gold or silver. You got the bronze. But, Skip, Michael is well aware. Michael will never admit this, but he's well aware of what people say and how he's viewed. And his legacy is the ultimate importance, because the thing is, Skip, when you're done, you're done. There's no more adding. There's no more subtracting. So this is why Tom Brady's continue to play. Tom Brady would love to have that all-time passing touchdown, because, Skip, look how long he'll keep it. If Drew Brees only plays 1 more year, Tom Brady plays 2 years, he ends his career with 585, 590, maybe even 600 touchdowns. That's going to be so long. You believe Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for another 240 touchdowns to possibly catch that? Patrick Mahomes is a long, long way away. So this thing might stand forever. That's his legacy. So, Skip, I got 6 TDs. I got 6 Super Bowls. I got the all-time passing mark as far as yards and touchdowns. Skip, imagine, this would be no debate. If Michael had 40,000 points with all this, because, like you said, a lot of this is going to have to be an accumulation. LeBron has 5 MVPs, has 4 or 5 finals MVPs, and he's the all-time leading scorer. Well, it would be a moot point if Jordan had all that. If Jordan had many points, had more points than Kareem, it'd be. I don't know how you could catch that.
Okay, so back to the motivation for this. Remember on Friday, I pointed out to you, and you said that Michael has a hard time acknowledging, his sort of rivalry with LeBron, if you will. He doesn't consider it a rivalry, but I pointed out to you in 2013, that's 7 years ago, a piece that ran in ESPN, the magazine, by Wright Thompson pointed out just how much that LeBron was already sticking in Michael's craw. Now remember, it posted on the magazine came out on February 14th of 2013. And Wright Thompson wrote that Michael had already been studying LeBron's game and was quick to point out to Wright Thompson his many flaws in his game. And the first flaw that he pointed out that Wright wrote about in the piece, you can look it up, was that Michael had decided that when LeBron went left, he usually pulled up. When he drove right, he usually continued to drive it to the basket. And Michael had decided that LeBron was much more potent going to his right because he was bigger than Michael. And he said, Michael admitted, I would have a hard time contending him at the rim. So I'm going to force him, push him to go left. I ain't letting him go right. That's the quote, Michael, about LeBron in 2013. So he had already broken down LeBron's game to the point that he's saying, this is how I would stop him if I defended him. And remember, Michael took huge pride, at least as much pride in his defense. He was a former Defensive Player of the Year back in the 80s, and he was first team all defense 9 times, including that 97-98 Last Dance season. So he was thinking about how he could defend and control and maybe even stop LeBron in 2013. I have been told by several people around Michael that he always thought that he was tougher mentally than LeBron was because he watched closely because LeBron's had some meltdowns in his career, the most infamous being obviously the 2011 finals, the first go-around with the Heat against the Dallas Mavericks when the Heat were obviously up 2-1 at Dallas. And you know the rest of the story. The chosen one became the frozen one. And he's had several freeze-ups that Michael never had. So Michael looks down on LeBron as, gee, they're saying he's better than me. I would never have frozen up like that. And again, I've also been told Kobe also looked down on LeBron for those reasons, that Kobe wouldn't have frozen up in those situations either. So that's why those two guys thought, gee, how can you say he's better than us when in big moments he's shrunk? And in the end, I believe that Michael needed everybody to see once again, once and for all, just how great he was in clutch moments, because we saw, Shannon, the 63-point game at the end of the 85-86 season when he broke his foot, obviously, and then he came back slowly but surely. He resented the fact that Reinsdorf and Krause wanted to keep his minutes down, low, 7-minute bursts per half. Quarter. I mean, per half.
Per half.
So the point was, when he finally got to play a full game at Boston, it was game 2 that he just exploded, and he scored 63. But remember, we got to see him make the free throw, the standalone free throw, to force overtime. So the point was, I think Michael's saying, gee, I want everybody to see that. I want everybody to hear Larry Bird say, oh, he was God disguised as Michael Jordan. And that's Larry Bird saying that. And point out to all the, as I call them, blind witnesses who idolize and adore and put on a pedestal LeBron James. Oh, remember this, remember this, remember this. We even got to hear Steve Kerr after the documentary last night on Scott Van Pelt's show talking about how it wasn't just that he physically dominated the league. he spiritually owned the league, like psychologically owned the league, and the impact was dramatic. So remember, Michael has editorial control. He signs off on everything you're seeing. So there's not complete objectivity here, that it's through Michael's eyes what you're seeing. And he wants everybody to see the truth that, you know, Steve Kerr, Larry Bird, other players, we saw Magic last night saying there's just never been anything like him. So I do think a lot of this is about LeBron James trying to put him back in his place.
Skip, if you remember, Larry Bird was the MVP that season, the 85-86 season. Larry Bird was the MVP, if I'm not mistaken. Skip, that might have been that might have been the end of the three-peat of his MVPs, because he won them consecutively. Skip. And the thing is, you talk about the 63 he dropped in game 2. He dropped 49 in game 1, and he played golf with Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge said he took some money off him. They dropped Danny Ainge off, and they drive him back to the hotel. He told the guy that was telling the story, said, "Hey, tell your boy DJ, I got something for him tomorrow." And dropped 63 on DJ, Larry Bird, Danny Ainge, and Bill Walton. Skip, I think the thing is, if you look at Jordan has really always, Kobe, when they ask him, well, who's better? Well, isn't 5 better than 3? I think that rubs LeBron the wrong way, because LeBron, all the other greats, from Kareem to Magic and Bird, have Big O, have paid respects to LeBron. I don't think he feels that he's ever gotten the credit or the respect from Jordan, and that's who he would really want it would mean the most to him. Not that it's the end-all, be-all, Skip, but if what you're going for, if what you aspire to be, and if your mentor, if the guy that you aspire to be is willing to say, you know what, he's that guy, I think that would mean the world to LeBron James.
Yep, I agree. Last quick point before Jenny takes us to break, Shannon. Did you see Rick Carlisle, who we only know mostly as the coach of the Dallas Mavericks? Obviously, they beat LeBron in the finals in 2011. And you got to see a second-year Rick Carlisle out of the University of Virginia trying to guard Michael Jordan on the baseline, and Jordan just wheels around him and dunks it. And Rick Carlisle's just shaking his head like, what am I doing out here? Yeah.
That was my favorite part of the entire episode last night. Love that. All right, we got to stop. I'm interrupting. Here's the thing, Shannon. I'm curious if the documentary has changed your mind on who the actual true GOAT is. We'll discuss next on Undisputed.
No mercy.
All right, guys, we're going to jump right back into Michael Jordan's Last Dance documentary, because last night we were lucky enough to see the first 2 episodes and honestly really got a chance to witness the competitiveness we saw from Michael Jordan. Really, he had throughout his career and his life. So, Shannon, I need you to be honest here. Is there anything you saw last night that made you believe and change your mind that Michael Jordan is really the GOAT over LeBron?
Absolutely not. Not one thing. Because I remember all those games. I remember the shot at North Carolina. Remember, I said I was the one that told people Skip Bayless had people believing that the man hit a walk-off shot. And I said, no, he did not hit a walk-off shot. There was 15 seconds, and Freddie Brown turned the ball over to James Worthy because the guy flashed, and James Worthy overplayed him, and he thought that was his guy, and he passed the ball. So there was still 15 seconds. That was me that did that, Skip Bayless. You think you're slick. You tried to pass it off. Oh, he hit the last second shot and time ran off the clock. No, it did not. I remember the 63 points. I remember the 49 points in game 1. Skip, and I see why Steve Kerr, people don't know this, but Steve Kerr was on the Cavaliers team that Michael Jordan dropped 69 on and kept knocking them out of the playoffs year after year, wasn't he, Skip? That's why Steve Kerr, not only did he bust his head, he played with him and then he swung on him. But that's neither here nor there. What I saw last night, what I didn't know, Skip, was the aura. Is that the way when he traveled and the rock star treatment that this team, yeah, Skip, everybody was there to see Mike. We know that. Kind of like the Jackson 5, everybody knew they were there to see Mike. We knew. It's funny, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, there's something about these mics that just takes off. But Skip, you only saw a handful of games. And in order for someone to do a documentary about you, you had to be great at some point in time at something. be it an artist, be it a football player, basketball player, it doesn't matter. I'm Netflix out on documentaries because that's all I've been watching. So you were great. Let me take that back. You might have been great or infamous, but at some point in time, Skip, there was cachet around you in order for them to do a documentary. I got an opportunity to see behind the curtains. I got an opportunity to see and to hear firsthand the vitriol, the hatred, the blatant dislike, and the open and blatant disrespect that they showed toward Jerry Krause, and how Jerry Reinsdorf played a central role in breaking this up. And here we are getting 100% of the blame to Jerry Krause. Nah, bro, you get 50% of this. I'm giving you 75 because you own the team. You could have put a stop to this because he wanted to move on with Phil Jackson after the 97 season. But what'd you do? Hop a plane, go out to Montana, give him a 1-year deal, just like you could have gave him a 3-year deal or 2-year deal and says, okay, guys, if you win this one, you're coming back. If you don't, we're breaking it up. Phil, hey, you're gone because I already know we're going to start breaking it up and you're gone. So that didn't happen, Skip. It was just the aura. Nothing has changed about the play. This was not about, for me, the first part, Skip, I got more about the surrounding, the peripheral. Skip, I already knew they won the championship that year. I already knew how great of a player that he was. So nothing has changed for me. Now, I don't believe, Skip, I feel very comfortable in saying that there will be never another basketball player that has this kind of aura around him. Skip, I can't explain it. And I'm normally good at words. I'm normally good at telling stories, Skip. I pride myself on being able to tell a story. But unless you've been around Michael Jordan and to see how this man levitates, it's nothing like it, and I don't believe we'll ever see it again. Like I said, we're never going to see another Tiger. We're never going to see another Ali, and we're never going to see a Jordan in that aspect.
I do not believe your conclusion. I believe that Shannon Sharpe watched last night, and at some point, maybe several points, Shannon Sharpe sat back and shook his head and said, Lord, have mercy. LeBron can't compete with that. I think you looked at just the sheer athleticism. We've never seen anything like the way this man carried himself, maneuvered on the basketball floor. I've never seen anything like it. I told you through 97, 98, I watched every game, and every night I'd say, man, I've never seen that before. He was the whole offense. He was the guy they kicked it to with the shot clock at 5, 4, 3, 2, as they called him, the ultimate bailout guy. And Shannon, he turned himself into the greatest mid-range jump shooter in the history of the game. That's why he won 10 scoring titles to LeBron's 1. And yet, if you saw him play defense in spurts last night, you saw a man who made 9 first-team all-defensive team. 9. LeBron's made 6, but 9 to 6. And he didn't play nearly as many years as LeBron continues to play. This man, Michael Jordan, led the league in steals 3 times. Obviously, LeBron has never done that. And need I remind everybody, he got to the finals 6 times, and he owned the finals all 6 times with 6 finals MVPs. And then Shannon, what gets me, and I believe really gets LeBron, sticks in his craw, is if you're talking about GOAT, you can't even qualify LeBron for the discussion because he suffered so many meltdowns that Jordan never would have suffered. There's no way Jordan would have come apart the way LeBron did in his last go-around, his first stop in Cleveland, when his owner accused him of quitting as he melted down in games 4, 5, and 6 against the Celtics and bowed out ingloriously his first time around in Cleveland and got his jersey burned. That never happened to Michael because it couldn't happen. As much as Krause and Reinsdorf resented Michael, in their wildest dreams or nightmares, they would never accuse him of quitting. And then there's no way Michael would have come apart and melted down the way LeBron did in his first finals with the Heat after they were up 2-1. And then obviously from that point, 4, 5, and 6, he just shrank. Michael never did that. Michael never shrank down the stretch of a pivotal Game 6 in a 2013 finals the way LeBron did. He had 2 turnovers in the last 30 seconds of that game. He missed the tying 3, LeBricked it, and you know the rest of the story. Ray Allen saved his legacy. And there's no way that Michael Jordan would have been on a team that got blown out of the finals the way LeBron's team did in 2014 by a record finals margin. That just wouldn't have happened to Michael Jordan. And then there's no way, if you had handed Michael Jordan a 2-1 lead with Game 4 in his house against the first incarnation of Golden State, that he would have spit that bit. There's no way he would have let that happen. And again, we know what happened. Golden State put Iguodala in the starting lineup, and he guarded LeBron. And LeBron ran out of gas, quote unquote, and they lost games 4, 5, and 6. It seems like there's a theme here that LeBron kept melting down in games 4, 5, and 6. And then dare I even bring up that Game 1, couple of finals back at Golden State? They had him. We're going to talk in a few minutes about the last shot that Jordan made in his career, Game 6 at Utah. Well, LeBron had them. He had them with the ball in his hands.
Stop it.
With Steph was switched on to him, and they're down 1 just the way Jordan was. And LeBron passed up the last jump shot. Just that was Michael's shot. Michael made that shot. And obviously, if we go all the way back to the college shot, listen, Dean Smith, as much as he shackled Michael Jordan, as much as he held him down because of the all-for-one offense that he taught and mandated, he told Michael in the huddle of that championship game when Michael was a true freshman, if you have the shot, take it, because he could already see this kid's got it all. He's probably the most likely to make that shot, even though they called the play for James Worthy, big game James. But the ball got swung back to Jordan, and he did not hesitate. And as he said, nobody on Georgetown had a clue I was going to take and make that shot. And he made it because he's Jordan. So in the big picture, I've never thought this GOAT debate was it was almost blasphemous to even invoke the name of LeBron and put it in the same sentence with Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And I'm just glad that last night settled that debate. It's over.
No, it's not. Hold on. Wait a minute. No, it's not. And I need you to stop telling me what I thought and what I think. I do not think this was about play. This is not about aura. Skip, I'll give you a prime example. Let's just say these two guys, and both of these guys are deceased, Michael Jackson and Prince. Now, I do not believe Prince has the aura of Michael Jackson. But Prince is more talented. He can play more instruments. He can write more songs. So, for me, can I not make the case that Prince is the GOAT? Sure, I could. But you want to take it about, one shot. But when Jordan didn't take the last shot against the Phoenix Suns, I think it was Phoenix, and Steve Kerr hit that shot, nobody said a word. But that's what you have teammates for. He said there could be no Michael without Scottie. Okay, if that's the case, why didn't Michael get to the NBA Finals without Scottie Pippen? Why couldn't he get past the first round without Pippen? He's the GOAT. Why couldn't he beat the big three Celtics in their prime? He's the GOAT because you're asking LeBron, if LeBron is the GOAT, he should beat the Warriors with KD. Why couldn't Jordan beat the big three Celtics? Why couldn't he get the bad boy Pistons until they started breaking up and they started falling apart? Why, Skip? If he's the GOAT, like you said Michael Jordan is the GOAT. Why couldn't he get out of the first round without Pip?
Okay. Why couldn't LeBron beat the Spurs, quote unquote, by himself? Why did he get swept in Cleveland? Why did he then say, I've got to take my talents to South Beach and join forces with not one, but two perennial all-stars, both Dwayne Wade, who I think was better than Scottie Pippen. That's just me. I'll take Dwayne Wade over Scottie Pippen any day or any night. And he also had perennial Toronto all-star Chris Bosh. He joined two of them. Michael had one. He had Scotty. He was a good Robin to Batman. I'll give you that. But he didn't need two of them, and he didn't need to go somewhere else to find them. He just made Scotty into what Scotty became. He made him into a top 50 player.
Well, what we started to see is that teams were getting away from the double superstars, the Shaq and Kobe, the Kareem and Magic. They had gotten away, the Stockton Malones. Everybody had gone to three, the big three Celtics. That's why the Celtics were so dominant and when they got James Worthy. So now you got a big three Lakers with Worthy, Kareem, and Magic to match the big three Celtics. And then you saw the new big three Celtics. That's why they put that team together, because they had saw what a 22-year-old kid had just done to a team that had represented the East, had been in 5-6 straight Eastern Conference Finals, and had taken down the Shaq Kobe Lakers and the bad boy Pistons too. LeBron took it apart, and they saw what was going on in Boston. And what did they do, Skip? If I'm not mistaken, Kevin Garnett did not get drafted by the Boston Celtics. Neither did Ray Allen. But they put that team together. They weren't putting teams together to beat Michael Jordan. They put teams together to take down GOAT James. Now, you say, well, why didn't he beat the Spurs? So you want him to beat Tim Duncan in his prime, Tony Parker in his prime, Manu Ginobili in his prime. You want him to beat them, but you ain't got no problem with Jordan getting swept by the big three Celtics.
Time out. Did you ever hear Tim Duncan say after those finals, gee, we were playing God disguised as LeBron James? I never heard that. I never heard that kind of reverence afforded to LeBron that Larry Bird afforded to Michael Jordan.
This is what he said. He said, we got this one, but your time's coming. I had to get this one because I know what's about to happen. You're about to take the nation by storm. And over the next 6 years, guess what happened, Skip Bayless? 4 regular season MVPs. That's what happened, because they knew he was coming. Just like Magic, just like Larry said, we knew he was coming.
No, what happened was that all the way to 2014, Tim Duncan and company blew LeBron off the floor by a record finals margin. They knew he was coming. He was going. He was leaving. He was going back to Cleveland is where he was going. And I got to make one last point before you jump in. The Jordan that we saw as a baby, skinny Michael, trying to beat the all-time great Boston Celtics, the big three, and then taking on the bad boy Pistons. And it was so bad then that Sam Smith, we saw on SportsCenter last night on Scott Van Pelt's show, talking about the book he wrote, The Jordan Rules, after the first championship season. It took Detroit having a set of rules to beat up Michael Jordan and try to hold him down, just physically playing football with him. Then it took the great Tim Grover, the trainer of Jordan, to say, hey, we've got to put on some muscle. So he put on some muscle. He changed his physique in time for the arrival of Scottie Pippen. And then you saw a whole new Jordan take it a whole nother level. So I'm sorry, once he broke through, he went GOAT 6 straight times, and it's over, Shannon, and you know it, and I know it. You did a nice job of trying to defend your guy.
He went 3-3, and Scottie Pippen got there in 87. So what happened in 87, 88, and 89, and 90? So that was 4 years. What happened in that span, Skip? Did they stop playing finals? Did they not have the finals? I just need to know.
It took him that long to do what Dwayne did.
We're going to break down more from the first 2 episodes of The Last Dance next on Undisputed.
No mercy.
Welcome back to Undisputed. Well, last night we finally got to watch the first 2 episodes of Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance, and it was awesome. All right, a couple things we learned. One thing was that even if the Bulls went 82-0 in the 1997-98 season, Jerry Krause was not going to bring back Phil Jackson as head coach. So, Shannon, what was your biggest takeaway from the first 2 episodes?
Well, I think a lot of people probably took this away as that the hatred and the vitriol, and hate is a strong term, but I sincerely believe in the depths of his heart, he hated Jerry Krause. He hated him for a number of reasons. He felt that Jerry Krause wanted to get in on the celebration, Skip. He wanted to be as integral part of the success as Jordan and Scottie and Phil Jackson. And they just weren't, they weren't allowing that. They kept him at an arm's distance, and he was still trying to somehow find a way to finagle his way up under the rope. And Skip, it was like there was never a celebration, and I'm anxious to see, and there are going to be more parts to come, where they're celebrating with him as they won a championship. If you remember, Skip, in 2016, when the commissioner handed the trophy to Dan Gilbert, LeBron politely took it right out of his hand and lifted it up and passed it around to the rest of the team. And I believe this is the way Michael Jordan felt about Jerry Krause. Skip, you hear, well, yeah, Jerry Krause, he didn't really like him. But to hear him speak today, well, you got a glimpse at his Hall of Fame. He told you kind of how he felt. Now, I don't know if he invited him. I don't think he invited him, Skip. He's one of the few people that he didn't invite, wasn't it? Maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I know he ethered him at his speech.
Mm-hmm. He did.
And
yep.
And but for me, Skip, is that I think some of Michael's venom should be pointed at Jerry Reinsdorf too, because Jerry Reinsdorf could have prevented all this, Skip. Yes, he bestowed the power, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna let my general manager. But in a situation like this, you have veto power for a reason. And if you feel, so in other words, he and Jerry, they built, and he said it. We felt, with the exception of Mike, everybody else was at the tail end of their careers. Well, Steve Kerr went on to win 3 more championships, Skip. So much for the tail end of that one. Ron Harper went on to win 3 more championships, Skip. So much for the tail end for that one. So you mean to tell me it's hard for me to see a situation, Skip? They would not have, at least, at worst case, barring an injury, Skip, and we can't say they're not going to have injury, but barring an injury, they're at least the Eastern Conference representative. And then you get to the finals, hey, we'll see what happens. But it's hard for me to imagine a scenario, Skip, that they would not have been the Eastern Conference representative. And they at least owed them that, Skip. Beat me. Don't break it up. Now, see, Skip, I think you would probably have even more of a problem. Let's just say the Patriots win the title. That's 7, and they do what they did. At least you can say, well, Skip, they went out in the divisional round. You can see they got old, okay, and okay, fine, boom, we can do that. But not like this. But Michael, even though he might dislike something, you know what I saw last night, what came crystal clear to me, Skip? Winning trumps all the other emotions that Michael Jordan might have. Be it love, be it hate, be it dislike, be it anger, be it frustration. Winning, he will set all of those other emotions aside to win a basketball game or to win at something. And that came crystal clear through the screen last night. Watching him and listening at him talk, winning is the only thing that matters to Michael Jordan. And as you said, it's killing him that he can't draft the correct players to put on the court to win. It's eating him up because he's wanted everything. He's good at cards. He's good at golf. He's good at everything he's ever done except picking players and the fielding a team that can win.
So, we spoke earlier about 2 other situations that are dear to our hearts and to this show. Jimmy versus Jerry. I wrote books about it in Dallas. It was inevitable that they were going to collide head on and that it was going to have a finite length to it. It was going to explode at some point, and it finally exploded after 2 Super Bowls. And I can't blame either one of them. I can't condemn one side or the other. They just locked horns and clashed over credit. And Jerry did do some good things to help build that dynasty. And obviously, Jimmy and Jerry both, they did great things to help build it. And yet, in the end, at least you can say this about that. You can say that Jerry went on and picked Barry Switzer to coach the team, and they did win 1 more Super Bowl. So at least that happened. At least that took some of the sting out of it. And when we talk about Brady versus Belichick, at least Robert Kraft managed somehow to keep it together for 20 years.
20 years.
And it was hard, man, and it got worse and worse over the last 3, and it finally hit the wall. But at least They got 9 Super Bowls out of it and 6 rings out of it. This thing was prematurely blown apart by 2 men who had even bigger egos in the end than Michael Jeffrey Jordan had. And I'm glad that the world got to see inside what I got to live through as the columnist at the Chicago Tribune through the 97-98 Bulls season, the last dance. I felt it from the inside out. Nothing I saw last night shocked me, but I was happy that the world got to see what a scoundrel and a villain Jerry Krause was. And I'm glad that you, Shannon Sharpe, have the ultimate correct takeaway. In the end, it was mostly Jerry Reinsdorf's fault. He was the owner of both the White Sox and the Bulls. Jerry Krause started as some kind of low-level, weird scout. I don't even know what, he played a little bit of high school baseball. He's like 5 feet 3 inches tall. And even Jerry Reinsdorf admitted on the documentary in a recent interview, I was told by people, don't touch him, that he tends to alienate people. Then you put that man in charge of Michael Jordan's Bulls teams? He didn't draft Michael. Michael had nothing but resentment from the start for him. Michael was alienated like that, and he should have been. So I didn't think Michael came off badly last night. He didn't come off as a horrible person. Who wouldn't ridicule that little man that I nicknamed the Penguin after the Danny DeVito villain character in Batman Returns, the 1992 Batman starring Michael Keaton that you might remember. And by the way, Jerry Krause despised that nickname. Jerry Krause reamed me out one day after a playoff game in Charlotte. I was coming out of the public restroom and he caught me right there in the doorway and just reamed me out. And he said, how can you call me that? How can you ridicule me in print that way? Do you know what that's doing to my family? And my response was, do you know what you're doing to Jordan's family with this team? You're going to blow this team apart. It could win 2 more championships. And again, Jerry Reinsdorf, I wanted to hear him apologize last night. And in a recent interview, he said, to your point, as you brought it up, Shannon, we decided this team was hitting the wall. That everybody was coming to the end of their careers except Michael. Well, Michael had vowed he's gone if Phil's gone, and you didn't believe him? You didn't buy that? Well, couldn't you have apologized, Jerry Reinsdorf, for that? No. Smugly, he said, we thought it was time to rebuild. Well, way to go, right. Jerry Reinsdorf. You cost yourself, I think, 2 more championship trophies, and you cost yourself NBA infamy because you're going to go down in infamous history as the man ultimately responsible for ending Michael Jordan's Bulls run prematurely.
Skip, not only do I remember the Penguin from the Danny DeVito character in 1992, I remember the Penguin in the Batman and Robin TV series. Burgess Meredith played the original Penguin in the TV series. But Skip, I believe where it really turned sour for Michael and Jerry Krause, Skip, was in '86. And because remember, he said we had come all the way back to the game because he could only play in 7-minute spurts, 7-minute half. And he basically told Stan Auerbach, who was his head coach at the time, play me in the most critical 7 minutes. And so he got hot. They bring him all the way back to Indy. And his time's up. Jerry Krause basically told him, say, Stan, if you're playing past the 7 minutes, you're fired. So in other words, so what happens is John Paxson ends up hitting a shot, they win. They go into the locker room. Stan Auerbach locks the door because Jerry Krause wants to get in and celebrate with him. They say, hell no. You ain't Skip, can you imagine? Skip, imagine Bill Belichick locking the owner. Well, he can't lock the general manager because he's the general manager. But can you imagine that? Can you imagine Tom Brady? Because the general manager is Bill Belichick. Can you imagine Tom Brady being openly and as blatantly disrespectful to Coach Belichick, the general manager, as Pippen and Jordan was? Skip, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine a player being like that to a general manager, a person in that kind of position. But it just goes to show you, because Mike was about winning. Jerry Krause all of a sudden became about getting draft picks and moving up. Michael, like, not on my watch. I'm trying to win. And Skip, and someone said it was never the same after that. Said Michael just like, nope, I'm done. Don't basically, we speak in passing, but that's it.
Yep. And one other quick takeaway, Shannon, from last night was Rod Thorne, who did pick Jordan because he fell into his lap at number 3, readily admitting that if Rod Thorne, had the first overall pick, he also would have taken Akeem Olajuwon. I'm sorry, that's just wrong. And yet that shows you, I believe the whole league had decided, it's Olajuwon. And if Portland needs a big because they got Clyde Drexler, go ahead and take Sam Bowie. That's okay. They need a 7-footer. It wasn't okay. I still don't believe it was okay for Houston to take Olajuwon. As much respect as I have. Akeem the Dream, I get it. This was Michael Jordan. I'm sorry. Everybody should have seen that coming, and nobody really did.
No.
And speaking of winning, should Michael Jordan and that Bulls team have gone on to win even more titles? Skip and Shannon debate next on Undisputed.
No mercy.
All right, guys, Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf and Bulls GM Jerry Krause refused to bring back Phil Jackson after the 1997-98 season. Well, Michael Jordan said that he wouldn't play for any other coach, and subsequently he retired. So, Shannon, I start with you. Had the Jerrys not blown up the team, how many more titles would the Bulls have won?
Man, Skip, you know I hate doing hypotheticals, but I'm going to say none. Because I believe, if you remember, Skip, they had gone to they went 7 games with Indiana in that last season they were together. They went 6 games with the Jazz in the finals. And if you look at what they were going to be up against, you do realize in 99, the Western Conference representative was the San Antonio Spurs. Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Sean Elliott, Mario Elie, and Avery Johnson. That was their starting 5. They went 15-2 in the finals. Now, what Jordan had a problem with was big starting lineups. And that's what, remember the big 3 Celtics, they had a big starting lineup. Skip, look, I know it's easy for us to say, but it's hard for me to believe that they were going to be able to get past that team. And a lot of Scottie Pippen, and I said that, he went on to play 6 more years, but those years that he played was never like the years that he played with Mike. And so it would have been interesting to see. Now, I wish, Skip, they would have let this thing stay together. So therefore, we could have had definitive proof one way or another. But I don't know. I'm going to say, if I happen to hold my feet to the fire, Skip, I'm going to say they wouldn't have won another championship. Because if you remember what happened in 2000, the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. You believe they beating Shaq and Kobe with Michael Jordan at 37, 38? Nah. Ain't happening. Skip, stop it, man. Stop shaking your head. Yeah, I can see you. You do realize I can see you shaking your head, yes.
Shannon Sharpe. Michael Jordan had just won his 10th scoring title in 97-98. He was 34 years of age, and he wouldn't be 35 until the following year's February 17th. He had made first team all defense yet again for a 9th time. I saw him at his peak, and it would have continued because I mentioned before, the great Tim Grover had him on a workout regimen unlike any I had seen. Obviously, LeBron has taken it to another level, but again, this was an extremely high level where his body, if you look at it in 97-98, it looked fabulous. He had figured it out. They had learned how to manage him through the hardships of an 82-game season. And I'll remind you, he played 82 games, 10 times? So they got it. They had it down to a science. And I believe he could have played at that MVP level for 2 more seasons. And if you look at the rest of the team, Scottie, once he was away from Michael, well, he turned back into just sort of another guy. He wasn't a team leader. He wasn't a number 1. He wasn't an alpha. And when he went to Houston for a year and then Portland for 4, he got exposed as just a nice player, pretty good player who couldn't lead a team to a championship because he didn't have Michael. But obviously, Michael needed a Robin. He needed somebody. Scotty did play 6 more years. Tony Kukoc, who was very valuable to that team. Once upon a time, Jerry Krause called him the Michael Jordan of Europe. Tony Kukoc played 8 more years. He was just entering his prime. Luke Longley at 7'2", he played 3 more years. Ron Harper played 3 more years. Steve Kerr, you mentioned before, played 5 more years. Scotty Burrell, Michael was always on top of him. He's the 20th overall pick, and he really pushed him like ridiculously hard, but he played 3 more years. Little Randy Brown, who was an integral cog on that team, played 5 more years. Winnington, the other 7-footer, played 2 more years. And I get to Dennis Rodman. He played 2 more years. He psychologically self-destructed in L.A. and Dallas with the Lakers, but he averaged 11 rebounds a game for the Lakers and 14 rebounds a game for Dallas. I believe he had 2 more very high quality, maybe lead the league in rebounding below the rim kind of years with the Bulls under Jordan. Jordan knew how to keep Dennis in line. I just think with Phil still being the coach, one of the great coaches ever, that they could have beaten the early part of my Spurs when they were just starting to become the Spurs, even with Duncan and Robinson. I believe they could have beaten them just because of Jordan. And I believe they could have beaten Shaq and Kobe, the young Shaq and the very young Kobe, with Jordan. I just believe, we talked about it the other day, I believe the 98 Bulls would have beaten, especially the first version of Shaq and Kobe. I'm sorry, he was just too dominating. He had the all-time killer will. He was the coldest-blooded assassin I ever saw on a basketball court, and this was the best defensive team I ever saw. Obviously, injuries could happen. We'll never know about injuries, attrition, whatever. But if the 2 Jerrys had stayed out of the way, I see 2 more. And obviously, if David Stern had not sent Michael on that early sabbatical that cost the Bulls 2 years of Jordan effectively, I think they could have won 10 straight rings because of Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Skip, if you don't mind me asking, Skip, how are they going to pay him? You remember those last 2 years, Michael made over $30 million. Michael made more than the whole entire team. And then Scottie Pippen was coming up. You also remember, Skip, after Michael Jordan made that $33 million, they had the lockout, and what did they do? Put a max on how much a player can make. So the question is now, okay, you keep it together, how do you pay him? Michael had just made $33 million for winning a championship. What's he going to want now, 50? Scottie Pippen was one of the long-term deal. So how are you going to pay them to keep them together? And immediately after that, Skip, because remember the next season was a lockout. I think they only played, 50 games that year? And they put a cap. That's when the max salary came in, Skip, and they put a cap on how much a player can make during the course of a season because they saw the way this thing was headed. Skip, it's just hard for me to believe. Like I said, I just wish, for my sake, and I think for everybody's sake, we wish the Jerrys would have got their butts out of the way and let this thing stay together. At least, at the bare minimum, Skip, they owed us 1 year to see what they could have done. And if they don't repeat, if they don't, follow that thing up with the 4-peat, tear it apart. Okay, I'm cool with that. But it leaves too much speculation, Skip. It's hard. We knew for certainty that the Golden State Warriors was going to 3-peat. We knew it. KD, Clay, Steph, Draymond, it was a foregone conclusion. And then all of a sudden, a ruptured Achilles, a torn knee, and then we're thinking, if they don't get hurt, Skip, we'll never know. If they don't get hurt, I think most people are saying, yeah, I know Kawhi had an all-time great finals, but Kawhi Leonard, I don't believe was going to beat those guys. But we'll never know. And that's what happens, Skip. If he doesn't, and it's easy to say, if Jordan doesn't miss those years, 94 and almost all of 95, he came back with 15, 20 games left. If he doesn't miss all that time, Skip, to go to 8 straight, what LeBron did and not get injured, with the exception of Skip of that 2 weeks where he missed for his back, Skip, might be the most remarkable thing that we'll ever see, considering that in that time frame, you go to 8 straight finals, and he's playing somewhere around 70, 72, 73 games a season. Skip, nobody's ever going to do that again. And he didn't get no serious injuries. KD did it 3 times in his Achilles. Clay did it 5 times and he ruptures his knee. Think about it. What Magic started happening to Magic when they was going to all them finals? Hamstring. Byron Scott, hamstring. James Worthy, knee. Skip, that's a lot of wear and tear. You're playing 82 games and you're playing in the June. I don't know, Skip. It's just hard for me to believe that they were going to roll this thing back.
All right. That's a fair point. But I just wish we could have seen it happen, see what would have happened, because they had earned the right for it to happen.
Yes.
And again, after Jordan came down wrong, flat-footed, and broke his foot, as you know, in the 84-85 season, he stayed remarkably healthy the rest of the way. He did not have a knee injury. He did not have a shoulder. He did not have an Achilles. And as I pointed out to you earlier, he played all 82. It was actually 9 times to just 1 time for LeBron. And 11 times Michael played 80-plus games. He did get the break of the forced sabbatical right there in the middle of the 3 and the 3. And I will give you this. It's remarkable what LeBron endured to get his team to 8 straight finals. But I still say the competition was not exactly severe in what we always call the Eastern Conference. And now back to how would you pay them? Remember, the NBA cap has never been as hard as the NFL cap. It's a softer cap with all kinds of clauses and loophole and bird rights, and there are ways to get around it. Not to mention that Michael, until that last year, is actually the last 2 years, had always taken outrageously low money. Yeah, but he took so little that he was Brady before Brady. Brady always took hometown discount to maximize Belichick's ability to surround him with the proper help. That didn't happen the last year there, but the point was he kept taking less than he deserved or had earned, or would earn for that matter. And I believe whatever would have been necessary to keep them together for 2 more years, Michael would have done financially. He would have taken less. Again, you heard what he said about Scotty. We needed Scotty. We wanted Scotty. All that. I got it. Well, Scotty deserved more money, obviously, than he was getting. So if they had paid Scotty, I believe Michael would have taken less because clearly, Shannon, Michael was making beaucoup money from sneaker sales. He was becoming, or had already become, the all-time ultimate sneaker salesman, and the money he was making from Nike was just fine, thank you very much. So would they have had to cut some spare parts, mix and match with some veteran minimum? Yes, they would have. But everybody wanted to play with Michael, even though Michael was tough to play with and for. So I still say they could have kept it together if they had wanted to. And it's the saddest story to me on the court in sports history that they didn't get a shot.
Skip, you mentioned that Michael, he broke his foot in the 85. That was his second season. He broke his foot in the 85-86 season. And you remember, Skip, he was telling how he talked Jerry Krause and Jerry Ryan. He talked them into letting him go back to Carolina. Well, at Carolina, he's working out. He's playing 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5. Can you imagine now trying to do that? How much footage would have gotten out of Michael Jordan in the gym playing basketball on a broken foot?
Such a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, Shannon. All right, I want to bring LeBron back into the mix here, guys. Would LeBron have taken the same shot MJ did to win the 1998 finals? How about we think about that one next on Undisputed?
No mercy.
In Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals, Michael Jordan famously stole the ball from Karl Malone before nailing the game-winning shot over Brian Russell. MJ could have passed the ball to an open Scottie Pippen on that last possession, but instead decided to take the shot himself. So, Shannon, would LeBron have handled it the same way that Michael Jordan did?
Well, Skip, you love putting me in these hypothetical situations. LeBron James is going to make the right basketball play. LeBron is really not a drive, pull-up type of a guy, Skip. If you notice LeBron is a fadeaway, three-point shooter, drive all the way to the basket. So probably Byron Russell probably would have played him differently. he probably would have backed off because he wouldn't have respected LeBron as a shooter like he did Jordan. So he had to hug up on Jordan because Jordan could shoot the ball at the mid-range. And so in the process of him hugging up on him, Jordan was, and plus Jordan still possessed at that time, Skip, the ability to get by you to the rim. So he just wanted to make sure, I can't give him a layup. I can't give him a layup. So as he turns, Jordan just gave him that shove and helped him get a little further to the rim where he wanted to protect and rises up over him. Skip, would he have taken that shot if he had gotten it wide open like Jordan did? Yes. But I don't believe LeBron would have, I don't believe Byron Russell would have played LeBron like he played Jordan. If you remember, Skip, against the Spurs, they were telling back up. We'll give him that. And so it's hard to say he would have taken that exact shot because I don't believe Byron Russell would have given him that opportunity to take that shot because he'd have been off, backed off him a little bit. But if he was open, as wide open as Jordan was, sure he would have taken it.
Shannon Sharpe, that
What?
final sequence and that final shot were precisely what separated Michael Jordan from LeBron. What elevated Michael above LeBron James was all right before your very eyes if you watched the whole final sequence. Now we need some context. I was there that night at Utah for Game 6. I was sitting courtside. It felt like I could reach out and touch Michael as he took the final shot. And I was told just before tip-off by a Bulls insider that Scotty had taken sick. He had fallen ill with some kind of flu, and it was so bad that he was a game-time decision whether he could even play Game 6. There was also a fear with a quick turnaround for Game 7 at Utah that he would not be available for a potential Game 7 versus Stockton and Malone in their house, the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. And right away in that game, Scotty did suck it up and try to go. He had a wide open dunk and he wrenched his back, probably because he was a little out of sorts, a little out of sync. And for a while, it looked like he wouldn't be able to come back into the game because of his wrenched back. To his credit, he did suck it up and last 26 minutes in that Game 6. Michael Jordan played 44 minutes and scored 45 points. The rest of the Bulls combined scored 42 points, 45 for Michael in 44 minutes to 42 for the whole rest of the team. Scotty managed to take 7 shots in that game, made 4 of them, but they're all twos, so he had 8 total points. So now we get to the final sequence. The Bulls are down the classic 1 point, so it's going to be sink or swim, do or die. And Michael ducks behind Karl Malone, as you've always pointed out, guarded by Dennis Rodman. That's who was guarding Karl. But he snaked behind him, knocked the ball cleanly out of Karl's hands. That's on Karl for not protecting the basketball. Grabbed and secured the basketball, and he elected to dribble it. Michael did all the way up court. Meanwhile, you can see over on the wing, for reasons I never quite figured, Scotty actually pauses coming up court to complain to the referee. And I'm thinking, now that I watched the video, I watched it 1,000 times yesterday, why would he want to complain to the referee? This is it. This is the final shot, the final sequence of probably your Bulls run. This is the last dance. Scotty, what are you doing? And it dawned on me, well, maybe he didn't really want to be a part of the final shot because he didn't really feel like he was up to taking and making the final shot. But he does duck into your picture, if you see the video, late, just as Michael is putting his move on Brian Russell. And I will give you, Michael did get away with a little push-off. That's the way the game was played in the late 90s. There was still a football element to pro basketball.
Yeah.
And he got away with it because you just did. Everybody got away with that kind of a little subtle push-off. It wasn't enough to call an offensive foul in that era at that moment. And he did separate just enough from him. And Brian was a hellacious defender who had done a really good job on Michael in previous games, such as Game 5 back at the United Center in Chicago. And yet Michael was able to rise up and, as you know, hold the pose as the ball's swishing through the nets. And I told you before, I own only one piece of sports memorabilia that I keep on the wall, and that's a final shot picture, and it's taken from the far baseline. And my favorite part of it is Scotty is over on the wing like this with his hands up like, I'm open. And I don't know if Michael saw him or not. He probably did because he had high basketball IQ and great court vision. And if he did see him, he's like, no. Yeah. Well, maybe by that point,
I don't think you saw him,
he didn't care.
Because if you look at it, Skip, Karl Malone is guarding Scottie Pippen. Karl Malone is guarding Scottie Pippen.
Sank.
And as Michael starts... Right, so as he starts to come, Pippen was about to duck in, and then he sees Michael coming, he backs out. Karl Malone continues to go. And I believe that's why he pulled up. I believe, Skip, he might have tried to get all the way to the basket had Karl Malone not come. I don't think he saw Scotty, Skip, because he had his head down. I don't think he saw Scotty out his peripheral. But in a situation like that, Skip, LeBron James, my guy, GOAT James, is going to make the right play. He passed the ball to a guy that's in the NBA that was making $19 million. That's one George Hill. I would like to think that every player in the NBA, regardless of salary, can make a layup. And what should also happen is that you should be able to make free throws, especially if you're a guard. He was a career 81% free throw shooter. And he gagged one of them off, Skip. You know it, and I know it. So no matter what happened, if LeBron takes the last shot and makes it, they're going to say, oh, he just got lucky. If he misses it, he's unclutched. He passes it, that's why he's not Michael. LeBron was going to get criticized either way because that's what we do. Remember, he hit the game-winning shot against Indiana? Well, there was no pressure because the game was tied. He hit the game against Chicago, the game winner against Chicago. Well, he was mad because David Blatt drew the play up for somebody else. We were always going to find a way to criticize LeBron, but at the end of the day, we see these clutch buckets time after time, or as the song goes, time after time.
You know and I know, LeBron in that situation would have kicked it to Scotty because it would have been the right basketball play. Scotty was an okay three-point shooter. He was 34% during that season. He had not been very good during the playoffs. But still, LeBron could have justified the right play was a wide open, unguarded Scottie Pippen standing on the wing. I'm open. And yet, Michael pulled up and did what he does best, what he was the greatest at. No one has ever shot two-point jump shots any more clutchly than Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And he swished that one. And yet, on the other hand, if Karl had stayed out and Michael had driven the ball, Michael had the guts to go to the late game free throw line if required and make two to win. If you're down one, you have to make both to win the game. He would have made both. You know and I know in the similar situation, there's no way LeBron is going to drive the basketball. Even as in game one at Oracle a couple of years ago, he had Steph switched on to him. He could have driven on Steph and he could have shot the free throws instead of George Hill. But there's no way, Michael, that LeBron was going to make two free throws to win the game at the buzzer. I'm sorry. You know it, and I know it.
The last time we saw the Lakers play is against the Brooklyn Nets, and we saw LeBron drive. They bring four guys. He kicks to AD for a wide-open three, and AD misses it. It's as simple as this, Skip. The NBA is a make-or-miss league.
All right. One All-Star already admitted, guys, that the documentary could change his mind on the MJ versus LeBron debate. We go there next on Undisputed.
No mercy.
All right, guys, Trae Young, who has previously called LeBron the GOAT, and keep in mind, wasn't even born when Michael Jordan hit that game-winning shot in the 1998 NBA Finals, tweeted this out yesterday. He said, I feel like this documentary gonna make me put MJ number one instead of number two. So, Shannon, how much will young people who did not really get a chance to watch Michael Jordan play live be swayed by what they saw last night and what they will see from this documentary?
I think some young people will be swayed. And that's what happens when we see documentaries, Skip. And for me, I happen to be a situation where I'm old enough to remember Michael Jordan taking that shot at Carolina in 1982. And I remember him hitting that game-winning shot. And I remember him going to the Wizards in the early 2000s. But Skip, if you didn't know about a player, it's going to sway you. If you didn't know just how good Michael Jordan was, it's probably going to sway you. Skip, you know, while being quarantined, I've had an opportunity, and I've watched a lot of documentaries. And some of these documentaries, I knew about Sam Cooke, and I knew about Miles Davis, and I knew about some of these other guys. But some of the guys, like a Lee Morgan, I had never heard of. And then you see the documentary, you're like, well, damn, didn't no one ever talk about him? So you learn things if you didn't already know. About Sam Cooke, I knew Sam Cooke can sing. But Skip, I didn't know how involved he was in the civil rights, and I didn't know kind of what made him tick and how he felt about certain things, about how he couldn't perform. And he was proud, and he would stand up in the face of, you know, white authority. So for me, Skip, it doesn't change me for the simple fact is that I know what Michael Jordan was, but I get an opportunity to see behind the scenes. But I think also, Skip, is that guys generally gravitate towards guys in their era that they played against. And I think that's, for me, I think Aaron Donald, I think J.J. Watt and Khalil Mack and Von Miller, I think they're tremendous. But there's no way in hell I could put them in front of LT or Reggie White or Bruce. I think some of these DBs currently playing, but they don't go in front of time. They don't go in front of Ward. That's just me because I played against those guys. Now I'm watching these guys play, Skip, and they're hell of a players. Not to take anything away from them. But I think for the young guys, like a guy like Trae, Skip, he don't remember one shot that Mike took. Not one. So he's getting an opportunity to see. Skip, there have been a lot of guys that could glide through the air. Elgin Baylor could dunk the ball. David Thompson, Dr. J. There's a lot of guys that had trick shots off the glass. Pete Maravich and a lot of different guys. But nobody possessed the acrobatics, the creativity like a Michael Jordan, and the ability to score the basketball. That's what made him so unique, Skip. He could score like Wilt. He had the acrobatics and the elevation of a Dr. J, but the creativity of a Pistol Pete Maravich. We had never seen a guy that had all that in one package. And then you get the aura that's around him, the Beatles or the Jacksons at their height. We've never seen anything like it before, Skip, and I think that's what some people, and plus, Skip, what does he got? The logo, the Jumpman. Now you got Skip, you got NFL players wearing Jumpman cleats. We've never seen a guy that had that kind of crossover. We've never seen that. And to hear David Falk tell the story that Michael wanted to sign with Adidas, but they didn't want to give him what you gonna call the line. Skip, they didn't even want to call the line Jordan. They're like, we'll give him a clothing line, but we're going to call it something else. What? You better call it Jordan, Air Jordan, whatever it was. And because he played, he looked like he was elevating. He's like, gravity didn't define him. He was defied gravity. So for me, Skip, I think that's what's going to be. It's everything that's around him. And he was a damn great 15-time generational great player. But it's all the things that went around Jordan. And everything that we see, Skip, because the table that they're eating from right now, Michael Jordan said it.
You got it, which is why soon after this doc ended last night, I tweeted, say goodnight, LeBron, and I meant it, as in say goodnight to the GOAT debate, because Trae Young called this even before he watched the doc. Yeah, today he's going to be swept up in what he saw, the emotions that got pulled from people last night as they saw what Michael actually went through with that little scoundrel Jerry Krause. And it made you feel for Michael and even elevate him to a higher pedestal, that he was having to deal with that and that owner, Jerry Reinsdorf. And I do think this is going to have supreme impact on younger people who, like Trae, were not even born before 1998. And I do think that it is also supreme timing, because Jordan has always been right place, right time. And obviously, they moved up the release date of this doc because we're all stuck at home for the right reason, but everybody was on fire last night to watch this, almost like it was the equivalent of a live playoff event. NFL, NBA, whatever you want it to be, it felt like a new live thing we could all react to when we're all so starved, so ravenous for anything live in the world and realm of sports. So I do think the kids are going to get caught up in this, and they're going to say, wow, because Steve Kerr said, if you saw the footage from '98, he was asking France, what's unique about this team? And he says, well, we're unique because of Michael. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. And you got to see Larry Bird in an updated interview. Larry Bird said, yeah, after he scored 63 on us in game 2 of the playoffs, they won it in overtime. The Celtics of Bird did, Parrish and McHale. Double. And yet Bird said that was God disguised as Michael Jordan. Wow, that's impactful. You could actually see the acrobatic athleticism, the mid-range jumpers on display, and you could see them in sequence and in context to the point that I do believe kids will sit back and say, man, LeBron, I don't know. We're always prisoners of a moment, and I think this is prisoners of a time now that we all got to see from inside out the way I lived it as the columnist for the Chicago Tribune in '98. And now the world got to see it. And I think it's going to make it harder on LeBron to make his GOAT case. I'm very intrigued to see how LeBron responds now if he comes forward with his own IG Live about all my greatest moments. I don't know. Yeah, he might.
We got a documentary brewing. Me and Matt, we're going to sit down. We're going to discuss that later today. We got something brewing. Not right now. I think we got a couple of more championships we're going to win. And we got a lot of footage that we're going to roll out. It probably won't be a 10-part series. It's probably going to be like 5 or 6, but who knows? Well, we got to put brainstorm, get all these heads in the room and something's going to come together. Skip, but look. In that era, that's Magic and that's Kareem, that's Larry, that's a lot of great guys. And Skip, I believe they're going to kind of tend to lean towards those guys. It's kind of like if you talk about magicians. Now, people that grew up watching Harry Houdini going to say Harry Houdini is the greatest magician ever. But these new age, Skip, will probably say it's Copperfield or David Blaine. Look, I didn't see Harry Houdini. But some of the things that I heard he was able to do, it defies what someone should be able to do, especially if you're in a straitjacket, handcuffed, and all that other things. But Skip, Michael with the shoe. Exactly, Skip. Michael with the shoe. Michael with the endorsements. Everything you see what these players are doing currently, Michael built that foundation. So what they're standing on is because of the platform that guy. So Skip, even if you don't believe it, Skip, that man fed me. He's the reason I'm getting $200 million. He's the reason I got a shoe contract. He's the reason I can be in movies and start these other platforms. He gave everybody the blueprint, and everybody is beholden to that. And so, Skip, I believe he's going to sway probably 30, 40% of this younger generation. They're like, we got to go with Mike. But it's still GOAT.
Well, even though Michael Jordan has done so much well on and off the court, he's also had some failures, guys. So did he release The Last Dance to make up for some of those mistakes? We go there next. No mercy. Michael Jordan is considered by many to be the GOAT for what he has done on the court. But off the court, well, he just hasn't had the same success as a team builder. Since MJ took over the Charlotte Hornets, the team has only made the playoffs 3 times since 2006. So, Shannon, in your opinion, how much has Michael Jordan been affected by his failure to be a team builder, and how much did that impact his decision to make this documentary now?
Zero. Because I separate Michael Jordan, the player, from Michael Jordan, the general manager or the team builder. This documentary last night was about him as a GOAT and behind the scenes and the aura around Michael Jordan. Has nothing to do with him building a team. So for me, I separate those two. Player, general manager, team builder is just like Jerry West. Jerry West being an all-time great team builder does not add to his legacy as a ball player. They're totally different. Now, we can have a discussion that Jerry West might be one of the all-time great team builders, and you probably wouldn't get a whole lot of debate with that, Skip Bayless, but that doesn't help his playing career. He won an 8 finals. He's an all-time great player, and he's one of the few, Skip, and you said this. Normally, the greater the player is, the harder it is for him to pick players because he thinks everybody should be like him or her. And that's not the case. It's normally the guys that weren't very good or that was, they played or good players that's able to build a team with a lot of success. And so for me, I've differentiated the two from the jump. I look at Michael Jordan, the player, all-time great, historically great. Argue if you want to, he's the best player of all time. But when it comes to team building, I say that, and he's terrible. But I don't combine the two. I want them separate. I like ice cream, I like gravy. I just don't put the two together.
Shannon Sharpe, I told you there were 2 reasons that Michael dropped this documentary now. 1, LeBron's phony GOAT argument, and number 2, Michael's all-time worst failure as a team builder, because I think it eats him alive that he went back to his home state of Carolina, in Charlotte, in the mecca of Carolina basketball, and he's been an abject all-time loser as a team builder. This is the greatest competitor ever. This, to me, is the greatest winner ever. What was Michael's great line? I never lost a game, I just ran out of time. His team hasn't even gotten out of 1 round of the playoffs in his 14 years of running the Charlotte franchise. 14 years without 1 playoff series victory, made it only 3 times. And if I can just quickly run through the list, and I've told you my rule of thumb, that the greater the player, usually the worse the picker of players as a team builder. And Michael, the greatest player ever, is the worst picker of players ever. And if I can just hit some of the lowlights quickly, Shannon. Well, let's go back to the Washington days. Remember, he was running the team then, and he took Kwame Brown with their first-round pick over Pau Gasol. Well, that's a huge mistake. And then let's start on the huger mistakes. He passed on Brandon Roy for Adam Morrison. What? He passed on Drew Holiday for Gerald Henderson. No. He passed on Clay and Kawhi for Kemba. No. Then he passed on Bradley Beal and Damian for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. No. And then he passed on Giannis for Cody Zeller, and then on Devin Booker for Frank Kaminsky. No. And then on, finally, Donovan Mitchell to take Malik Monk. So I just showed you, he just swings and misses constantly, and it's eating him alive. So I think as he turns 57 years of age, and he knows there's a whole generation, as we just spoke of in our last segment, who just don't know him. They didn't watch any Jordan live. They only know him. Oh, he's that guy, that sorry team builder in Charlotte. Well, he doesn't want to become known for that. And so in the end, he says, I got to drop the doc to remind everybody how great I was as a player, to sort of take away some of the stench. And I've always been honest about this. I'm the biggest, as you can see today, I'm the biggest Jordan fan, but I can't defend his team building or lack thereof in Charlotte. And I think now he wants to polish his mystique a little bit with this documentary. Oh, yeah, he was that guy, because that, to your point, is how he should be remembered. And I was fearful we were getting to a point with him running the Charlotte franchise that was going to be how he's going to be remembered in a basketball context.
Skipper, for me, when I look at John Elway, he runs the Broncos now. I look at John Elway, the player, and then I look at John Elway, the general manager. Same thing with Ozzie Newsome. Ozzie Newsome have drafted probably Ray Lewis first ballot, Ed Reed first ballot, Jonathan Ogden first ballot Hall of Famer. I believe Suggs will probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he has Lamar Jackson that won the MVP. Who knows what his trajectory is going to be, Skip. So you got that. But what Ozzy's been able to do off the field and building the Ravens into a playoff contending team every single year, 1-2 Super Bowls, that doesn't add to his legacy as a player because they're different. What John Elway is doing, building a team into a Super Bowl, drafting Von Miller, who I believe is going to go to the Hall of Fame, that doesn't add to his legacy as a player because they're two separate things, Skip. We got to stop. Just because you're a great actor does not make you're going to be a great director. And if you're a great director, it doesn't mean you can act. They're separate. We can't conflate the two things together and try to come up with one. That Last Dance has nothing to do about Michael and his inability to correctly build a basketball team. It has everything to do about his last season, what made him tick, what made him function, coming to Chicago, because they went back, with him getting drafted, the shot, all that, and all of the aura around him that we may never witness again. So if they want to do another documentary about his inability to build a basketball team, I'm all for it. But I will never confuse the two. Michael Jordan, the basketball player, Michael Jordan, the team builder. I will never get those two confused because they're two separate things.
Okay, look, the point here is, yes, I'm with you. A great player can't add to his playing resume with his team-building resume. I get that. But you can subtract from it if you're Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And again, Elway won a Super Bowl as a team builder. And you mentioned Ozzy, he's won several Super Bowls as a team builder. And Jerry West has contributed to multiple championships at different places. And he's about to contribute to another one with the Clippers as a team builder.
No, he's not.
But if he had swung and missed, if Elway was a disaster, if Ozzy had been a disaster, then maybe people would start thinking, gee, he really was a sorry executive in this league.
No, Skip. Look, but John did pick Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch. And I don't think either one of those guys are currently in the NFL. So, there have been some failures on his part. But like I said, when I look at John, there's John Elway, the guy that I played with, that's an MVP that won Super Bowls, that went to 5. And there's John Elway, the team builder. Skip, it doesn't add to his legacy on that side of it because it's two different arenas. And he said the hardest thing to do is to build a team because you have because you can't play. He's like, basically, you put the best players you possibly can out on the field, and then it's up to them. He's like, when I'm on the field, I got the ball. I really can control this thing. I can play great. You can have the best players, Skip, and they don't play great, and you're at their mercy. There's nothing else you can do. And I can assure you that Michael Jordan thought he was actually picking the right guy, Skip. It's easy to say going back, he should have picked this one, he should have picked that one. But, Skip, it's not that easy. You know that.
Okay, but what's tearing Michael apart is that he's worse than Jerry Krause at team building. That's the point here. And he wants to rectify that. He wants to erase that with this documentary.
Okay.
Enough MJ, enough Michael Jordan for now. We got to talk Tom Brady. Guys, he's been dethroned in one specific area. I'll tell you which QB took down Tom.
No mercy.
Recently, Tom Brady's Buccaneers jersey has been a high seller, but it wasn't enough to make him the most popular player in merchandise sales. According to the league, that honor for last season, well, it belongs to Patrick Mahomes. Shannon, your guy. So what does it tell you?
Tell me what I've been telling Skip. I've been preparing Skip this day for the last 3 years. I say my homeboy is coming and there's nothing you or your guy can do about it. It's just a matter of time. He's now officially the face of the NFL, the best player, and it's over. Even after your guy goes to a different team, and they buy jerseys like candy bars, my guy, Patrick Mahomes, is the face of the NFL, Skip Bayless. Deal with it. About to be back-to-back Super Bowl champs, too.
Oh, really? Shannon Sharpe.
Yep.
Just give me a month until next month's numbers come out, and your guy's going to be dethroned once again. Tom Brady is still the face of the NFL. Tom Brady is still all anybody wants to hear and read about. The idea, the very concept, the shocking notion of Tom Brady in a pewter Bucks jersey, number 12, is so incomprehensible that people are going to buy them like candy bars and hotcakes. You know, and I know that it's just a matter of time before Tom Brady is back in the saddle as the number one merchandise producer in the National Football League.
I tell you what, he won't be back in the saddle as the best player in the NFL, as the best quarterback in the NFL. He won't be back in that saddle. He might sell a few more jerseys. Okay, I'll concede that. But the one thing he will not be is the best quarterback in the NFL. That is officially over. We put that to bed. Now, good night, everyone.
Yeah, Mahomes is lucky that he's now in the NFC. That's all I got to say.
Save it for tomorrow, guys. That is it for Undisputed. Thank you for joining us. We will be back same time tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Have a great day, everyone.